Hello friends, this is Anton Karastalev from QuickTiles. You are watching the full course on the plugin. The current version is 1204, Lesson 3. In the past lessons, we started working with adding ready-made presets and only changed them a little. However, the QuickTiles plugin was created to give you the opportunity to easily and simply change and edit your own textures. Therefore, today we will finally see how it is work. Let's open the material editor, and add the new QuickTiles node. It is located in the Maps, General, QuickTiles. A double-click displays the interface. And now, instead of clicking on the Load Preset button, we click on the Add Bitmap Tile Set button. This will allow us to add the original textures. After clicking on it, an additional slicer module opens. I have already told you about it in the past lessons, and it's time to get to know it better. So, the slicer consists of 3 parts. The library is located in the left part. Here are our textures, and you can also save your own slices here. In the center, there is a viewport, in which you will mark the texture, and on the right are various tools and options. There is a block for adding new textures in the lower right corner. Click on the None button opposite the diffuse texture and add any custom texture. I use such a beautiful brick that we have in the library. Wait a few seconds and the textures are loaded. As you can see, in the viewport, diffuse is immediately displayed. However, with the help of the eye symbol, we can switch between other channels and see what they look like. By pointing the pointer to the viewport and scrolling the mouse wheel, I can zoom in or out of the texture. Let's go back to diffuse. As you remember from the first lesson, the QuickTiles algorithm works the same way as if you wanted to change the texture in Photoshop. However, here you do not need to cut it into separate bricks on your own, and you just need to point in the viewport where they are. For these purposes, the slicer has 3 modes. They are located in the upper right part of the window. Here you will see 2 panels. On the left is the tool panel, which will be available to us when working, and on the right is the mode panel. Let's go to the first one, the mode of creating a simple grid. When switching, the slicer warns us that the results of the work have been rejected. The first mode of editing the grid allows you to create a simple even grid without any additional options. There are only a few parameters here. These are the parameters for the number of vertical and horizontal lines, the movement of the rows, as well as the movement of the grid as a whole. Let's try. We add vertical lines, and as you can see in the viewport, they immediately appear and are displayed in blue. Now let's add horizontal lines so that the number approximately corresponds to the number of gaps. Excellent. As you can see, the horizontal and vertical gaps do not start quite evenly, so let's try to move the edge of the grid. This is done in the cropping parameters. It will work. Now let's adjust the number of lines and move each subsequent row by 50%. Change the number from 12 to 10, now everything suits us. Let's move the rows. For this, we have 2 lower parameters, row offset and n row offset. The row offset parameter indicates the force of the shift in percentages, and the n row offset parameter indicates which row will shift by this amount of percentages. For example, if I leave 1, then each subsequent row will shift by 50%. If I set 2, then the next row will shift by 25%, and after 1 by 50% and so on. But this does not quite coincide. We can either move the grid or move the texture. Let's move the texture. It shifts a lot at once, so you have to be careful. Fine, the upper rows are more or less leveled. And for us at the moment this is enough. Now in each cell QuickTiles will see a separate tile. But what about the gaps, you ask? For the designation of their thickness, there is a gaps parameter. We add a value greater than 0. And the thin blue lines immediately expand and capture the gaps. Thus, we have created an ideal grid that does not fit almost any natural texture. In order to edit it, let's go to the second mode, the free grid mode. Here we have the ability to move, delete or add separate edges. For this, we have the Move tool, eraser and scissors. Let's try to do something. We zoom in using the wheel. Also, by clamping the wheel, we can move the texture to the left or right. Now we have the Move tool selected. Accordingly, we can select any edge and move it. Vertical edges move separately between two horizontal ones, and horizontal ones move completely throughout the entire row. We can also delete any edges or add them. If you hold Shift, the vertical edge will be cut completely through the entire texture. This is where the possibilities of the second mode end, and for further editing we need to go to the third mode, the individual tiles mode. Now the instrument panel is fully available, and instead of lines, we will edit separate containers, which will allow us to mark the texture as accurately and clearly as possible. Let's go over the tools. So, the first tool is all simple, this is the Move tool. Here we can select any container and move it as we need. When selecting any other tool, the arrows on the keyboard also work. If you hold down any of them, the container will go up, down, right or left. The next tool is Rotation. Select and rotate any tile you need. The third tool is Scaling. There are some specifics here, let's take a closer look. Unlike scaling in 3D Max, in QuickTiles you can move only one of the sides of the container. The one that is closer to the cursor will move. At the same time, you can select several tiles at the same time, only one side will move closer to which your cursor is located. The next tool is Eraser. With it, you can remove or disable unnecessary containers. This means that if you have made a large and complex layout, but for some reason you need to temporarily remove some tiles from it, you cannot completely remove them, but simply temporarily turn them on. To do this, click on them with an eraser once. After that, they will become black and will not appear in the final output. If necessary, press the eraser again and the container will turn on again. If something went wrong, the standard Ctrl-Z key combination works in the slicer, which cancels the last action. The next tool is Scissors. It allows you to cut a tile into several parts. The width of the cut is equal to the set gap's width. If you hold Ctrl, the tile will be cut horizontally. Let's go back. And the last tool that we will look at today is the plus tool for creating new tiles. Everything is very simple here. We stretch the tile, just like if we were choosing icons on the desktop. Another tool in the panel is the orientation tool. Today we will not disassemble it and touch it in the next lessons. That is, when we have dealt with all the tools, let's remove all the resulting tiles and carefully create a few new ones. We select the plus tool and our task is to mark the boundaries of the tile as neatly and clearly as possible without going out on its gaps. In turn, we grab the gaps using the gaps parameter, installing them in such a way that they go a little on the adjacent tiles. Let's create a few more bricks. Also, bricks can be created through copying. We select the brick we need, Ctrl-C, Ctrl-V, and now we have a new brick. We can move it, scale it, rotate it, cut it, well, in general, apply all the tools from the tool panel. At this point, our work in the slicer is almost complete. We added our own textures, highlighted the tiles on them, grabbed the gaps, and now we can accept the result and move on to further work. However, before doing this, I wanted to tell you about another cool tool that we added to the slicer. This is an interactive texture scaling tool. Since many textures in QuickTiles are added in a very large size, for example, this brick is 14,000 pixels wide. Such a large scale is required only for the closest views. And if you are making a texture for the middle plane, you can use a smaller size and significantly facilitate computing for the PC, which means speeding up your work. But in order not to store several identical sets of textures in different sizes, you can simply click on the interactive reduction button and the texture will decrease by 50, 25, or 12%. We recommend doing this every time you test some new material, and then return if necessary to the full size. Now we will reduce the texture by 2 times. Great, everything has been calculated, and now we can accept the result. Click the Done button. The plugin informs you that slicing is taking place. And then, our texture has appeared in the preview. Now let's change the standard settings a little and take a closer look at the capture and processing of the initial gaps. Turn off the automatic preview update and make the created patch smaller. As you can see, the preview has disappeared and it will not appear until we either return the automatic update back or click the preview update button. Let's make the base tile a little smaller. I'll tell you more about it a little later in this lesson. And change the pattern a little. Open the pattern editor. I hope you remember how it looks and how it works. And now I'll just delete a single tile. We accept the result. Return the auto-update preview. And open the large preview. In the slicer, we highlighted only a few bricks and marked their edges with containers without going into the gaps. And the gaps were captured using the gaps parameter. This system allows the plugin to distinguish the tile area from the gap area and process the texture as high quality as possible. The plugin not only places the bricks side by side, but also carefully captures the initial gaps to the depth specified by the user and blurs them in the final texture for the most smooth and neat docking. This can be seen well if one of the pattern tiles is deleted. The strength of this blur is regulated by the gap blend parameter, which is located just below the button of the pattern editor. By default, the value is 0.5, but the more you capture the gap, the stronger you need to set the gap blend value. Also, increasing the blurring of gaps can help in difficult situations when the gaps on the original texture have an uneven color or texture. At the same time, if you set the gap blend value too high, you will see that the gaps begin to change color. This is because too much blurring shows the substrate that is under the texture. You can adjust its color or even apply a texture there in the procedural gap section, which is located slightly below. Let's go to it. Here is this section. A little later we will look at it in more detail, and now let's just change the color of the substrate to one that is more suitable for us. Now everything is fine and the substrate does not bother us anymore. Let's check the other channels. We go to the displacement channel and see that here the gaps are also too dark and they need to be lightened a little. We open the displacement color and also select it using the color picker. That's better. Also, let's check roughness. Naturally, roughness also needs to be changed. Here we set the maximum white color. Let's return our brick and discuss another important theoretical topic a little. Go back to the diffuse channel and open the pattern editor. And now I want to tell you how to set the size of individual tiles in QuickTile. When we have a texture in which all tiles are of the same size, there are no problems. We set the size of one tile, and this is where all our work ends. But what if the tiles in the layout have 2 sizes, or 3, or all tiles are random? It is impossible to set the size of all tiles individually in a huge layout. In order for such a situation not to become a problem for you, QuickTiles uses the base tile technology. What does this mean? Any pattern in QuickTiles is essentially a vector. And the plugin knows perfectly well how the size of the tiles and their distance from each other are related. Let's delete the current pattern and create a new one for the example. In this case, we use a 4x4 cell field, and this will be enough for us. Let's take the plus tool and create one large long tile. For example, let's assume that this tile is 25 by 6.5 centimeters in size, the standard size of a brick. Then the tile under it, which is twice as small, will be 12.5 centimeters by 6.5 centimeters in height, and the 2 small tiles next to it will be about 6.5 by 6.5 centimeters in size. At the same time, the second row is below the first row by 6.5 centimeters. Next, if we create, for example, a tile from 3 cells and from 1, then the size of the triple tile will be equal to 3/4 of the size of the quadruple tile. I think this principle should be clear to you. Let's complete our pattern with one long tile with a shift of 50%. As you remember, to make it seamless, it must be pulled over the edge. And we can practically click Done. There is one moment left. In order to set the size of all these tiles, some exact one, you need to select one single base tile, according to which the pattern will understand and calculate the sizes of all the others. By default, the base tile is selected automatically, but you can change this choice by selecting any other and pressing the Select Base Tile button. Then this new tile will be painted with diagonal lines. Let's go back to the long one and click Done. Open the large preview and see what we got. Our preview does not quite match what we set, and this is because the size of the base tile is now set to 18 by 6.5 centimeters. And so that we have a square tile here, and not a rectangle, we need to set the size to about 25 centimeters. Let's fix it. As you can see, our texture has stretched, and now our tiles here look more like what we set. However, they are still not square. This is because, do not forget that the gap also has its own thickness. By the way, when capturing the original gaps, the thickness is set in the gaps parameter in the slicer. And if you use several sets, I will say, going a little forward, then the smallest of all sets will be used, the width of the gaps parameter. Let's go to the slicer and try to change this parameter. Now we have the parameter set to 0.6, let's set it to 0.3. Accept the result. Open the large preview. I think it's obvious, the gaps have become thinner. The thinner the gaps parameter in the slicer, the less we need to make a gap blend. Let's make it somewhere 0.3. Pay attention, the gaps have become clearer. This is where our today's lesson comes to an end. I want to try to render this texture, and I will definitely save it to temp before working with it. Close the large preview, we don't need it anymore. We open the material creation, save the material to temp, and apply it on the plane. Apply the texture on the displacement. Check out the mapping. We have a pretty big one. Here the plugin shows 114 by 102.5. And let's try to render. Fine. I am very pleased with the result, because only a few bricks turned out to be a great texture. This is where our lesson comes to an end. Anton from QuickTiles was with you. Have a good day, and bye-bye.